Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about training volume and weak points. Because, when this topic comes up, I'll get people who say, well, if I've got this muscle and it's a weak link, and it could be their lats or whatever, upper back, and they'll say, well, couldn't I just do rows every day? Or couldn't I just do rows every day and they're also doing other stuff for their upper back? And the answer is no, not necessarily. It may not help. And what people need to remember, you cannot just throw mindless volume at a weak link. Trust me, I know, I've tried. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. And when you start looking at the volume study, set aside the extremely controversial stuff that Brad Schoenfeld threw out that contradicts 37 other studies and has been highly criticized for its methods. Set that one ultra high volume study aside. Look at the bulk of the data. It matches the real world. And that bulk of that data shows that maximum muscle growth occurs somewhere between 10 and 20 sets per week for a muscle group. Now, that being said, we know that every big multi-joint exercise is not a full set for every muscle involved. So keep that in mind when we're discussing this from that perspective. We're discussing it from that perspective. And we find in some cases, when you exceed about 10 sets for a muscle in a workout, that sometimes it causes less muscle growth, right? More work does not always equal more growth. And no, it's not overtraining. It's simply diminished returns relative to recovery. In other words, if it's taking longer to recover before you train that muscle again, we end up getting an inferior stimulus because the muscle's not recovered enough to progress. And if we're not progressing at all on any of our movements beyond a certain point, we're not stimulating new muscle growth. So there's a point where the volume just impedes recovery to the point to where muscle growth slows down. It's not overtraining, because overtraining we regress. That's the thing to remember. A true overtrained condition, you always lose muscle and strength. In this case, we're just talking about slower gains. So in other words, doing 15 or 20 sets for a muscle in one workout usually shows inferior muscle growth to 5 to 10. And the same thing when we start looking at overall weekly volumes. You start exceeding about 20 sets of real sets for a muscle in a week. For a non-enhanced lifter, what are you going to see? You're going to see reduced muscle growth. Right? It doesn't mean we don't make any gains. Overtraining, you come to a complete stop and then you regress. Not the same thing. It's just being outside of your optimal volumes. So when we look at it in terms of recovery resources, here's what we should be looking at. Right? We have limited recovery resources. And if you have a weak link, scale your volume accordingly. In other words, take your other muscles and bring that total volume down. Bring that total volume down. So what do we mean? Let's say your quads are a dominant muscle and your hamstrings are lagging. What might you do? Well, look at the quad dominant exercises you do and calculate up those sets. Again, I like to count speed work as half sets. And you might say, well, I probably really only need 10 to 12 real sets for my quads every week. Now, are we inside of that optimal volume? Yes. Are we not exceeding 10 sets for our quads in one workout? Yep. Are we doing at least 5 sets for our quads each workout? Probably, yep. So we're inside that window for near maximum growth. But we're not wasting extra recovery. And then we might do more hamstring work, and we might take that hamstring work all the way up to 10 sets per session so that we get 20 per week, so that we end up in a situation to where maybe our quads are getting 11 or 12 total sets a week of hard work sets, not counting a lot of the splash over from certain things. Yes, deadlifts do hit quads and so on. And by the way, no squat hits your hamstring. So that's one of the big reasons hamstrings tend to lag in a lot of lifters. They actually think things like squats, any form of squat contributes to hamstring growth. It's not going to. Do not count it. That's how you end up with weak underdeveloped hamstrings, trying to use squats and counting them as sets. But in this case, we would do more hamstring work, whether it's good mornings, RDLs, hamstring curls, glute ham raises, whatever you need to do. We would bring it up. Same thing with the lats or the upper back. You don't need to come in and do endless stuff. Very rare. I used to do a lot of my lifters where we would do upper back work all 4 days. I just found it's not necessary. I just need to get their volume right on their upper days. Get the volume right on their upper days. And keeping in mind they're going to be doing speed pulls and stuff also. But you look at a situation like that and say, okay, so if my upper back and mid back is lagging a bit, where do my priorities need to be? How about you pull your chin ups and pull ups out? Ooh, that's a big one that'll upset people because you're working your middle back. If your upper back needs a little bit more to go with your lats, then those exercises, you don't have recovery room for those. Pull them out. Do nothing but row variations. You can do other stuff too for your upper back. Different forms of laterals, rear delt flies, snatch grip high pulls. All that stuff works the upper back. Take all of your lat work over to rowing so that you get more upper back. All right, take it all over. Take that up to close to 20 sets a week. And if say your pecs and stuff are not lagging, then you could end up doing 12 sets for your pecs of real sets. You're benching, and that includes speed benching, whatever you're doing. If your arms are lagging, well, just do more arm work. But keep those numbers in mind. Keep those numbers in mind and look at it and say, okay, how many total sets do I need? Well, you probably, if you're already doing rowing and benching and stuff, you are getting some tricep and bicep work, although they're really half sets. But there's nothing preventing you from coming in and doing 5 or 6 sets of curls, 5 or 6 sets of tricep extensions of a couple different types on both of your upper body days, if those muscles really need the extra work. You look at delts the same way. You come in and do a couple exercises. And that's the other thing to think about too. If a muscle is truly lagging, you better be doing a couple different exercises for it. You need to be doing a couple different exercises for it. But here's what you do. We have that range, that 10 to 20 set range is our optimal zone per week. Your lagging muscles should be closer to the 20 set number, and your dominant muscles should be closer to 10. Right. Scale your training accordingly. That way you're not wasting recovery doing redundant sets for the more dominant muscles. Because keep in mind, the growth differences are very small between 10 and 20 sets a week. It's a very small difference. People say, well, then how are my lagging muscles going to catch up? They're going to catch up slowly. That's what they're going to do. But if the general trend is there, right, if your lagging muscles are growing at 100% of their possible growth, and your dominant muscles are only growing at 90 or 95% of the most muscle mass you could gain, you are having a general trend towards balancing it. And it's not going to fix quickly, because to make it fix quickly, you would need to let your dominant muscles regress. Well, that's not ever what we want either. We want to always be making progress. We can just bias that progress more into the direction of what we need to balance our strength out and balance out our weak points. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.